After my two recent Indian motorcycle rides on the Scout Bobber 20 and Springfield Dark Horse, I'm beginning to better understand how the new 2022 Chief might fit into Indian's lineup. At the moment, of all the bikes in the Indian motorcycle range currently available in Australia, the Scout Bobber 20 is my pick. But can the new Chief's arrival take top step? I'm asking this question because I'm wondering if there are actually a couple of areas where the Scout and Springfield might still hold an advantage. Let's jump straight in, compare key elements and get a better understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of each bike. The first thing I want to look at is something that really hit home on my last two Indian rides: ergonomics. Let's have a look at how 6 foot 1 inch Bill and 5 foot 9 inch Ted sit on each of these bikes. First up, let's do the Scout Bobber 20. Looking at Bill, we can see what I would class as a near perfect riding position. Arms look comfortable and relaxed, and legs are also in a very natural neutral position with thighs parallel to the ground. Let me assure you, after spending some time on the Scout Bobber 20, I can confirm. I found this riding position to be near perfect, possibly one of, if not the most comfortable riding position I've ever had on a bike. Keep in mind though, what I felt is all relative to my own personal body proportions, and your mileage may vary. For reference, I'm 6 foot 1. Ted at 5 foot 9, however, tells a slightly different story. While he looks relatively comfortable, his upper body is leaning into the bars a little more, and his legs are stretched out a little more. At 5 foot 9, I'm predicting Ted would find this bike comfortable, but in the case of the Scout Bobber 20, I'm predicting Bill will be a little more comfortable than Ted. Now the Springfield Dark Horse. For 6 foot 1 inch Bill, things are not so good. His knees are higher than his hips, and he is forced to lean forward and upward to reach the bars, creating a feeling of being slightly folded up. This is exactly how I felt on my test ride. Bill is locked into this position. There's no leaning back for a rest without taking his hands off the bars. As I discovered, this is an uncomfortable riding position. It's not all bad news though, as the upper body can easily be made more comfortable by rolling the bars back or fitting a new set of bars. There's very little that can be done to make the legs more comfortable, however, as the footboards really need to be lower. Either that or the seat made higher. And the situation worsens for 5 foot 9 inch Ted. While his leg position looks very comfortable, his upper body is being stretched far more than Bill's, with his hands even slightly above his shoulders. In this configuration, this bike would be very uncomfortable for Ted. Now, I have had feedback from a 6 foot 5 inch viewer who owns a Springfield Dark Horse, and he can confirm that the stock ape-hanger bars on the Springfield Dark Horse are very comfortable for someone of his height and reach, although his legs are not as comfortable as his upper body. He did state though that the Springfield Dark Horse was one of the most comfortable bikes he'd owned. I think this is a valuable lesson for all of us really. You shouldn't listen to just one reviewer. You should get a consensus from many and talk to people who actually own these bikes. Most importantly, find a reviewer who covers your height range or is the same or similar height as you. This leads me on to my future ergonomics testing process for upcoming videos. I've been gathering rider stats and working on adding a few more heights to my test dummy lineup. I will soon be including 5 foot 3 inch, 5 foot 6 inch, 5 foot 9 inch, 6 foot 1 inch and 6 foot 4 inch riders. I'm expecting this height range will cover most of my viewers. Watch out for these guys in upcoming videos. Now on to the new 2022 Chief Bobber Dark Horse. I've chosen these three particular bikes, the Scout Bobber, Chief Bobber and Springfield Dark Horse, because they all have similar riding positions and feature apes or mini ape handlebars. Looking at 6 foot 1 inch Bill on the Chief Bobber Dark Horse, his upper body looks comfortable enough, although his arms are raised a little more than on the Scout. They're also certainly in a more comfortable position than the Springfield. Interestingly, his legs are still slightly raised. I feel this is the result of a lower seat height than the Scout. Just on seat heights, the smallest bike covered today, the Scout Bobber 20, has the tallest seat height at 695mm, and the Chief and Springfield both feature lower seat heights at 662mm equally. Now looking at 5 foot 9 inch Ted on the Chief Bobber, we see a different story. if you're around 5'9", the Chief Bobber is tailor-made for you. I'd class Ted's ergonomics as almost perfect. Comfortable reach to the bars and thighs nearly parallel to the road. Ted is one lucky boy. What can we take away from this test? Well, after reviewing each rider on each bike, I'm predicting that if you're around Bill's 6'1" height, ergonomically, the Scout Bobber 20 is probably going to be the most comfortable for you, followed closely by the Chief Bobber Dark Horse, and of these three, the Springfield Dark Horse will be the least comfortable. But remember, that's with those ape hanger bars. Changing out the bars for some that pull back to you will give a much improved result. As of Ted and his 5'9" height, I'm predicting he'll be most comfortable on the Chief Bobber Dark Horse, followed by the Scout Bobber 20 and least comfortable on the Springfield Dark Horse. Now let's go over the weights and measures. When it comes to wet weight, the Scout Bobber 20 comes in at 571 pounds or 259 kilograms. The Chief Bobber Dark Horse weighs in at 694 pounds or 315 kilograms, and the Springfield Dark Horse rounds out at 790 pounds or 358 kilograms. Win to the Scout here, with the Chief Bobber Dark Horse landing right in the middle. Looking at engine capacities, the Scout measures 69 cubic inches or 1133 cc's. The Chief Bobber Dark Horse measures 116 cubic inches or 1890 cc's, and the Springfield Dark Horse also measures 116 cubic inches or 1890 cc's. If capacity is the be-all and end-all, then the Chief and Springfield take the win. Measuring torque, the Scout makes 72 foot-pound or 98 Newton-metres at 5,600 RPM, according to the Australian Indian website. Curiously, the US Indian website quotes the Scout making peak torque at 6,000 RPM. The Chief makes 120 foot-pound or 162 Newton-metres at 2,900 RPM, and the Springfield makes 126 foot-pound or 171 Newton-metres at 2,900 RPM. Now that's interesting. Even though the Chief and Springfield have the same 116 cubic inch engine, Indian quote higher torque figures for the Springfield. With that in mind, the Springfield wins this round. I will also say that at this point, after riding both the 1133cc Scout engine and 116 Springfield engines, both are equally entertaining to ride and I don't have a preference. Both engines reward with superb acceleration. They just produce their power in different ways. Now seat heights. The Scout measures 27.4 inches or 695 millimetres. The Chief measures 26 inches or 662 millimetres, and the Springfield also measures 26 inches or 662 millimetres. If you're a taller rider, the Scout's taller seat height is preferred, but if you're a shorter rider, then the Chief and Springfield share equal honours here. Overall widths of each bike. The Scout is 39.2 inches or 995 millimetres wide. The Chief is 36 inches or 915 millimetres wide, and the Springfield is 39.4 inches or 1000 millimetres wide. Interestingly, the Chief is the narrowest of these three, with the Scout and Springfield being almost identical in overall width. Comparing overall lengths, the Scout measures 87.5 inches or 2,223 millimetres. The Chief measures 90 inches or 2,286 millimetres, and the Springfield measures 99.3 inches or 2,522 millimetres. Not surprisingly, the biggest of the three. Comparing fuel tank sizes, the Scout has a 3.3 US gallon tank or 12.5 litres. The Chief has a 4 US gallon tank or 15.1 litres, and the Springfield has a 5.5 US gallon tank or 20.8 litres. Again, the new Chief finds its place right in the middle. Looking at fuel economy, the Scout gets a reported 45 miles per gallon or 5.23 litres per 100 kilometres. The Chief suggests a guesstimated 44 miles per gallon or 5.35 litres per 100 kilometres, and the Springfield gets an estimated 43 miles per gallon or 5.47 litres per 100 kilometres. All very close here, but the Scout should have a very small advantage. In my ride review of the Scout, the information I had at the time was 53 miles per gallon, but after more research, I think that may have been a little generous. Range to empty. The Scout estimates 148 miles or 239 kilometres to empty. The Chief calculates at 175 miles or 282 kilometres to empty, and the Springfield should go 236 miles or 380 kilometres to empty. If touring is your thing, the Springfield is the clear winner here. Again, the Chief lands in the middle. Now let's look at lean angles. The Scout's lean angle is 29 degrees. The Chief's lean angle is surprisingly slightly less at 28.5 degrees, and the bike with the greatest lean angle is again surprisingly the Springfield at 31 degrees. Now let's look at suspension and rider comfort. The Scout has 4.7 inches or 120 millimeters of travel on the front, and 2 inches or 51 millimeters on the rear. The Chief has 5.2 inches or 132 millimeters of travel on the front, and 3 inches or 75 millimeters of travel on the rear. And the Springfield rounds out at 4.7 inches or 119 millimeters of travel on the front, and 4.5 inches or 114 millimeters on the rear. Not having ridden the Chief, I can't speak to its comfort, but I can tell you the Scout suspension can be a little harsh at times, and the Springfield suspension I found to be quite plush. Having the longest suspension travel on the rear, I'm giving the win to the Springfield on this one. And now let's compare pricing. The Scout Bobber 20 starts at $11,999 US and 21,495 Australian dollars. The Chief Bobber Dark Horse starts at $18,999 US and 27,495 Australian dollars. And the Springfield Dark Horse starts at $22,499 US and 35,495 Australian dollars. Clear win to the Scout Bobber 20 here. For me, the Scout holds up remarkably well. Its looks, lighter weight, satisfying engine performance and sound, comfortable rider ergonomics for someone my height, and cheapest price all serve to make the Scout a front runner for me. In fact, after my test ride, I want one, which is pretty amazing because the Scout wasn't even on my radar. The new 2022 Chief does bring tempting new elements to the table, however. In particular, that new ride command system. Having everything, including a GPS, located in that one simple display is pretty clever. A larger fuel tank than a Scout is a bonus, as is longer rear suspension travel. Downsides for me are the increased weight over the Scout, slightly less fuel economy, and visibly less comfortable ergonomics. Now this is for the Chief Bobber Dark Horse. I'm now wondering if the Super Chief Limited might be a more comfortable option for me. Let's try something. Let's see what happens if I replace my preferred Scout riding position with the Super Chief Limited. What changes would I need to make to my posture on the Super Chief Limited? And would it be more comfortable than the Chief Bobber Dark Horse? The first thing I need to do is raise my knees to place my feet on the footboards. Let's do that. Instantly I can see this is a slightly less comfortable position for my legs. Now let's do the arms. Before I do that, I can immediately see I would be more comfortable with higher bars. This is something I would change if I bought the Super Chief Limited. Now looking at my arms, I feel this is too low for me. I know from past experience my shoulders would start to ache on longer rides in this position. Comparing the Chief Bobber Dark Horse and Super Chief Limited, surprisingly, the Super Chief Limited looks more cramped to me. That's interesting. Although neither Chief matches the Scout for my particular rider ergonomic needs. The Scout is still my pick. The Springfield is also another bike I wouldn't automatically ride off, especially if you're around 6'5". After my ride, despite the discomfort of the ape hanger bars, underneath I could tell it was a very nice bike to ride, and given the right set of bars, I could see myself enjoying that bike a whole lot more. The Springfield might actually be a really good bike for tall riders. If you're around 5'9", the Springfield Dark Horse could also be a good option, but I'd definitely be changing those bars. If you want to see my ride reviews and how I came to my conclusions for the Scout and Springfield, they're coming up next. If you liked this video, let YouTube know you enjoy watching this type of content by clicking the thumbs up button now. If you've made it this far, thanks heaps for watching everyone, and hopefully I'll see all of you again in my next video. Bye for now.